This event is a very timely discussion as the UN Secretary General has appointed a new envoy, and he's already started doing his work with a visit in Aden this week and then in Taiz. So today's topic is the role of the UN envoys plural, for Yemen over the last 10 years. We want to really focus on the 10 years of the UN Envoy's office in Yemen from the time of the Arab Spring until today, and look at the role that each individual envoy has played. Remember, we have Jamal Ben Omar, Ismail Sheikh, Martin Griffiths, and now Mr. Hans Grunberg, and how I would later with our discussion, I would really like to hear from Mr. Marwan and from Mr. Najeeb, Dr. Ghalib, on the evolution of the office, because we've had 4 different personalities at the helm. And please allow me first to introduce our speakers today. First, Dr. Najeeb Ghanem. We've met a while back, Doctor, when I invited you to our podcast, and I really thank you for being here today. It's definitely will be great to listen to someone like yourself with experience over the last 10 years dealing with the politics of the conflict since 2011. And obviously, we really want to welcome Mr. Marwan Ali, former UN Director of Political Affairs at the Office of the UN Envoy in Amman. So we have 2 great insiders. We definitely want to bring the best type of conversation that we can have to a general audience, not just an expert level audience, but to a general audience that is interested in the situation in Yemen and the conflict in Yemen. And at the moment, I'd like to see if Abdul Samad wants to do an introduction, a further presentation on the topic now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fernando. I'll just go ahead and present, the study that the center has sponsored, and allow me to start this presentation. So first of all, let me just introduce myself. My name is Omar Al-Jawfi, and I am the Director of the Program and Events at the Washington Center for Yemeni Studies. And we would like to send our gratitude and thanks to all the honorable speakers, Dr. Najeeb and Mr. Marwan, and it's great to have you in this thoughtful discussion. And thank you also, Mr. Fernando. I mean, I know you have a long experience in moderating such an important event. So the study that the center has sponsored is a very important topic, I mean, to all the Yemeni people nowadays, since we have the Special Envoys since 2011, after the Arabic Spring. And this study actually written by our visiting scholar, Mr. Adel Deshela, and the center has the honor to sponsor this important study. So I would just go ahead and go to the next slide. So the study actually investigate the roles of played by the UN envoys for Yemen, Jamal Ben Omar, since 2011 to 2015, and then Ismail Wald Sheikh, who came after from 2015 to 2018, as well as Martin Griffiths from 2018 to 2021. So the study will discuss an important topic, which is the international resolution issued by the UN Security Council and rounds of talk between the internationally recognized Yemeni government and the Houthis movement under the auspices of the UN. The study also will examine the reasons for the failure of the initiatives and the agreements, and also identifies the difficulties, will face. And we hope that he will not have any difficulties by the UN, the new UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Hans Gerb. So let me start with the structure of the study overall, and I'll try to summarize it briefly so we don't have that much time. And the team, our team will send it to everybody in the Zoom. That's the whole study, and we appreciate you guys to go over it and read it. So the structure of the study, the first subsection discusses the period of the UN's envoy, Jamal bin Omar, 2011-2015, and the events, dialogues, and agreement that took place during his period. The second subsection will address the consultation sponsored by the UN, as well as the initiatives launched by the second envoy, Ismail al-Sheikh Ahmed, 2015-2018. And then the third topic will concentrate on the long period of the UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Martin Griffiths, 2018-2021. And we'll touch the reasons of and factors that lead to the non-implementation of the agreement during his period and the difficulties he faced. Additionally, the study will examine the difficulties facing the current UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Hans Gradberg. So let's start by introducing and for audience to what is the concept of UN mediation. So mediation means a third party intervening to mediate between the parties to the conflict, with the aim of resolving the dispute between the two parties to the conflict, and to reach a comprehensive political settlement and reconciliation. Of course, we as Yemeni people, we suffered from this war. All of the people, and still suffering right now from this war. And we don't want a temporary solutions to this issues that we have right now, but we need a sustainable peace for the long term and for our coming generation. So let's start with the first subsection, which is Jamal bin Omar, the Gulf Initiative to Decisive Storm, 2011-2015. His role was supervising the mechanism of the GCC initiatives by the Gulf Council. The GCC initiatives, as you all know, came to find a political settlement between Mu'tamar al-Sha'bi al-Aam, the GPC, and its allies, and also the Liqa al-Mushtarak, the opposition parties, GMP, and their partners. It set in motion an orderly transition process and prevented a looming civil war. So the political transition was not executed properly due to the unwillingness of some of the signatories to the initiative. Saleh and Houthis alliance, Saleh Houthis alliance was established in this period to hinder the political process. So in this peace approach by bin Omar, he regardless what happened from 2011 to 2014, but the peace approach by bin Omar was to accepting armed movement, the Houthis, in the political process. It may help as a tactic to drag them to the political arena, but he should have been more cautious. Not to legalize their acts. And the UN focused on the political transition process and did not realize the seriousness of the economic situation. And from then, and however, the UN envoy proceed by prioritizing the political issues and treating the economic concern as a secondary issue. So we actually took this as that bin Omar he did not care about the economy in the first place, and only care about trying to get some work done between the internal factors. Internal factors to the conflict. So we had listed this the UN envoy and the Yemeni National Dialogue conference in DC, which is the important event that happened to the Yemenis since that time, which is Al-Mu'tamar al-Hawar al-Watani, which unaddressed serious issues during the NDC, and also he ignored the armed groups, was not like discussed and well taken care of. And also the peace also and national partnership agreement, the peace and national partnership agreement legitimized the armed corps of the Houthis movement and allowed it to expand militarily in the other governorates, which is expanding their acts in different governorates from Sana'a, reaching out to the border of Aden at that time. So I can in this slide, and it's very important that the Security Council resolutions issued during bin Umar team. We're talking about 2014, in 2011, and 2051, and in 2012 to 2140 resolution stated like supporting the implementation of the national dialogue outcomes, reaffirming and the need for the full and timely implementation of the political transition, and establishing a system of sanctions under Charter VIA of the United Nations Charter. So we talked about we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 resolutions issued during bin Umar, and to wrap up the whole resolutions. And even though the period of bin Umar was one of the most dynamic periods through his supervision, but of the implementation of political transition process and national dialogue, he was unable to make any political and military division between, and find also a national reconciliation between the conflicting parties, and lay the foundation of for building a modern civil state, despite the issuance of international resolutions that include measurement against obstructing the political settlement under the Charter of VII of the UN Charter. So the second, let's move to the second one, and I will try to make it as short as I can. I know the time is so sensitive, and we would like to hear from the other speakers. So Ismail Wald Sheikh Ahmed, and the most important event happened during his period was the Kuwait Dialogue to Carry Initiative, 2015, 2018. So it has rounds of talks during Wald Sheikh term, like the Geneva one negotiation, June 2015, and on December 2015 in Switzerland, and the Kuwait Dialogue, which was held on April 21, 2016. During his period, actually, we have almost 3 resolutions issued during Wald Sheikh. The resolution 2266 in 24 February 2016, extending the freeze and travel ban imposed the resolution issued during Jamal bin Umar 2140 in 2015 to help stem the crisis in Yemen, which is threatening the country ongoing political transition. And we had also the resolution in 2342. We had also the resolution 2402, and I would love for the audience to read the study more and dig into and read every resolution and the outcome, and they can actually compare what happened today and to the outcome in the ground. So the third one and the last, and finally we go with Martin Griffiths, from Stockholm Agreement to Joint Declaration in 2018, 2020. From 2018 to 2021. Signing the Stockholm Agreement between the Houthis and the Yemeni government. So Martin Griffiths actually, and the prisoners, and the second event happened during Martin Griffiths was the prisoners and the forcibly disappeared issues. We're talking about if you remember, the 301 prisoners was expecting to be released at the end of the UN talk between the Yemeni government and the Houthis in Amman. So, and during Griffith, we had also a lot of resolutions, and we were all like, on stand waiting and looking into what the solutions. We were in a critical issue, worried about our country. So we're talking about resolution 2451 in 2018. The council, insisted that, all the parties fully respect the ceasefire agreed for the Hodeidah governorate, as well as the commitment to redeploy their forces away from Hodeidah city and to the port. I mean, we're talking about 21 days of the ceasefire coming into force. And then we talk about, they talk also about resolution. The study talked about resolution 2452 in 2019, authorizing the establishment of a new special political mission, the United Nations mission, to support the Hodeidah agreement. I can read it all, and I summarized it all, and the study was actually rich of information about each resolution. And resolution 2481 in 2019, resolution 2511 in 25 February 2020, until the 2586 July 20 and 21. And these resolutions were actually issued by the Security Council to support the effort of Martin Griffiths in order to implement the Hodeidah agreement, with the hopes that they would be the first step. This would be the first step of finding a solution to the Yemeni crisis. So I can speak from now until the end of the webinar about the weakness. Not me, not the research, not the researchers, not the experts. All the Yemenis actually, they have this concern about the Griffiths performance. That the Griffiths actually used the policy of soft diplomacy by repeatedly describing the Houthis movement as a party to the conflict and overlooking its violations regarding the Stockholm Agreement while working as the UN envoy. This kind of diplomacy does not work with armed groups, and it has proven its failures. During the past decade, the UN's actually envoy for Yemen were unable to make a concrete progress in the political process between the Houthis and the Yemeni government, due to the many internal and regional obstacles, as well as the Houthis adherence to its theory of power, which is based on a theoretic theory, which made the envoy unable to convince them to any political partnership. Moreover, the UN envoys did not deal with the Southern Transitional Council, the STC, which is backed by the UAE, and which controls the city of Aden and other areas in Lahj, Abiyan, and Al-Dhala, especially after its formation in 2017. The STC actually at that time in Lahj, right? So speaks separate the Southern. Appreciate guys if you can mute. The STC actually was seeking, to separate the southern region, the southern governorate from the northern region, and demands an independent state. And he was, not dealing with them at that time. Let's say in his last period of the time. Finally, and I know my time is off. This is our website. It's clear that, the new special envoy to Yemen and his task will be a new international envoy, will face some difficulties and conflicts in the whole situation. The UN can benefit from the political support of achieving a comprehensive settlement in manner that maintains the entity of the Yemeni federal state. I will leave you here, guys, and I'll give the floor to the other speakers. Maybe they can give more advice to the new special envoy about his new term. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you. Okay, well, I think it's time for us to jump into some of those details and more into depth than what your outline put forth in your PowerPoint here. And there's a tons to discuss. As you said, we can talk about this issue for an entire week because you brought up a dozen, at least, issues that need to be analyzed independently in order to get at the driving factors behind the mandate, behind the obstacles, each actor that has interacted with the various envoys. To give our audience a little bit of background, for myself, I served in the UN panel from March 2017 to March 2019 as the armed experts and the regional experts. But I've been working in and out of Yemen since the summer of 2000. I was in Yemen living nearly full time until March 2014. So before all of the conflict started in Sana'a. But our guest speakers today, Mr. Marwan, he's worked for the UN for over 3 decades. He knows the ins and outs of the institutions that play a role in Yemen, for example, having worked as a political officer in the office of the UN Envoys over the past 10 years. And Dr. Najeeb Ghanem, who has served as an MP, a Minister of Parliament, since 2003, and he is a former Minister of Health. And for his party, he has been very active, and he knows how these developments have come, in particular to the conflict today. What I want to do before we get to Mr. Marwan, let's talk to Mr. Marwan first. But before I want to get to Mr. Marwan, I do want to highlight a couple of things from your presentation, Omar, that need to be mentioned, in my opinion. For example, in 2011, during the Arab Spring, the GCC Initiative, which is what transitioned from Ali Abdullah Saleh to President Hadi today, we have to keep in mind that the Houthis, or Ansar Allah, were not signatory to this deal. So this was between the Ali Abdullah Saleh, his party, the Al-Mu'tamar, the GPC, and the JMP, Islah, Al-Ba'ath, Socialist Party, Al-Haq, etc., who were part of this opposition group. So it is very important to keep that in mind. And as we go on in the Q&A part, I'll bring this up and why it's important. Also, that Hirak al-Janub, as you mentioned, Omar, the Southern Peaceful Movement, which has now transitioned into, morphed into the STC, the Southern Transitional Council, was not part of that agreement. It's not a signatory of that agreement. And then when we moved into the NDC, the National Dialogue Conference, we saw the tensions coming up with keeping that in mind from November 2011, that Hirak, the Southern Movement, was not included in that deal. And then, as you mentioned, the economy, the role that the issue of the economy has played, where I'm always reminded by US diplomats and by UN diplomats that we have to keep in mind that the Security Council does not specifically deal with the economy. So even though a lot of Yemenis and their organizations and the government and NGOs are pushing for a stronger approach, a more comprehensive approach to the economy in order to drive solutions to the conflict, we have to keep in mind that it's not part of the mandate. And this is some of the things that I would like to discuss with Mr. Marwan, in how the different envoys that he's worked with have dealt with this issue. Mr. Marwan Ali, welcome, sir. Can you hear me?
Thank you very much for that, and I really appreciate the discussion on the UN role, and I would like to highlight something before go to discussion on that, on not in Yemen, as you have said, and as most of everybody knows, that I work for the UN for decade, all of my life, basically. All of my working life was UN and the UN political affairs issues. I mean, unfortunately, in our part of the world and in many, such as usually depend or look to the UN as the body who can basically solve the problem. This is not true. The UN is reflect the international community and the regional dynamics and the local dynamics on its position. However, it has a role. It has the impartiality. It has the type of the mandate from the international community usually, which is, again, we'll talk about it later. The mandate usually restrain even all of the UN envoy from doing what they think in principle should be done. This is something we have to highlight in our discussion, because if we go back a little bit, as you have mentioned rightly, that the whole problem of Yemen started after or with the Arab Spring. And the Arab Spring basically was a public movement against the regimes in general, calling for demand, including the economic demand, which is totally ignored all over the history of the solution of Yemen. And I hope the new Special Envoy is going to pay attention to that. However, the Gulf Initiative, if we can start with during Jamal bin Omar, Gulf Initiative, where the Southern movement was excluded from the Gulf Initiative and Ansarullah were included. And these are the two main problems of Yemen, on top of the other problem or the demand of the public and the demonstration and so on. But the core of the problem of Yemen were how Ansarullah or how the Houthi movement was dealt with, historically speaking. You count how many wars were against them, and so on. So they have their grievances and they have their political issue and other issues where they share the rest with the UN. The same thing will go to the Southern movement. The Iraq at that time basically had their issues, and not only the Arab Spring, on top of Arab Spring, also they have the grievances. They were calling for their disintegration from Yemen, and they considered, or some of them considered, that the unity was forced of them. And the two main players now, basically, on the current situation are the SCC, which came out of the Southern movement, and Ansarullah, who are the Houthis. Basically, Ansarullah is basically controlling most of the population of Yemen, and SCC controlling, I mean, effectively controlling Adan, Dali', Lahij, but also they have influence on other southern governorates, where the problem started. Now, Jamal bin Omar has done a great job, and nobody can argue Jamal bin Omar, what Jamal bin Omar has done. But at the end of the day, I mean, everybody, and Dr. Najeeb can correct me if that, because he is someone who followed the issue. Did Jamal bin Omar has the power to enforce anything on the Yemeni? The agreement between Yemenis, where Yemenis have accepted that agreement. Okay, there are some minus in the agreement where the Southern movement did not feel presented, and the Houthis were, I mean, it's just like there are a little bit small gaps here and there, but at the end of the day, the Yemenis themselves, because of different dynamics within Yemen itself, and because, you know, the Gulf Initiative came to tackle Yemen with interest. It was not really impartial, fully impartial for Yemeni, and the Yemeni now consider it's one of the references of the peace process. I mean, the Gulf Initiative, but I can see that I can see it loud and clear. I mean, the problem, I mean, started on that time, not this time. Now, Ansarullah were more organized, had a vision, they have ideology, they are good fighters, they are organized, they have their own sort of ideology. They were organized more than anybody else in Yemen. And SCC had an issue as well ideologically. They have the southern issue. Their ideology, or they used the whole southern issue to basically enhance their situation. And they are the most organized. While you have that and the other parts, what remain from the government of Yemen or the internationally recognized government is conflicting parties. Basically, conflicting parties, even within the government, they don't agree how to run the area which is they call it liberated area or under control of the internationally recognized government. This is the big issue. I mean, I told the new Special Envoy before I leave, and I put it in writing to him how I see it. At the end of the day, the Yemeni themselves, they have to get together. I mean, forget about this confidence building measure. This is, I mean, this issue of opening Sana'a airport or opening Hudaydah or ceasefire. No. I mean, this is not something. This will not go anywhere. We saw that Hudaydah agreement, Stockholm during Martin Griffiths time, is just like we had an agreement. We have a Security Council resolution. The UN established a mission to oversee the Hudaydah, but nothing has happened. Even the prisoner exchange that you have mentioned, I mean, we agreed on Stockholm about the prisoner, how many prisoners were released through the agreement. Very few of them in comparison with thousands released on mutual understanding on the side. Basically, I mean, the UN is not really giving a role, a free hand to tackle the issue. And I believe it will not. I mean, at the end of the day, the Special Envoy is a facilitator, not somebody who's going to put on the table something which is failed all the time. I mean, the UN Special Envoy tried agreements during Ismail al-Sheikh, during Martin Griffiths, the joint declaration, or what the joint. I mean, they tried and they prepared everything, but that's not going to work. It didn't work, and it's not going to work, and it will not work. Right. What will work is basically, again, if the Yemeni themselves come together, agree on something, and then basically put the international community on the spot. Right. Other than that, forget it. That's not easy. I know that theory is very nice. It's very good to hear that they might agree together and so on, but that's also need the international community support, and they need the regional support. I mean, unfortunately, the Yemeni do not have the regional support. You can see how things are going on, even in the coalition, among the coalition. Right. Is withdraw. The Saudis now I heard a couple of hours ago that the Saudis are leaving Aden as well. I mean, that's how it is. I mean, it's just like it's not. I mean, the government Riyadh agreement, which is supposed to get the recognized government together, now for 2 years nothing has happened. It's still hanging around. They could not, unless unless the Yemeni themselves get together, agree on a compromise. I am not saying a compromise. I am not blaming anybody of them. I'm blaming all of them. I'm blaming all of them. And from working on Yemen, I mean, basically, I mean, neither Ansarullah or the recognized government parties, I can call it like that, parties, not one party,
right.
agree on something, nothing will happen. And I believe Hans, the new special envoy, knows and his intention, and he started basically the visit of Taiz. Why now is never happened during the previous envoys. I mean, that's shows something. And his visit to Aden twice since he arrived, it shows something else. Now he has some difficulties with Ansarullah. I think it's going to be solved. But I think he is still on the right track, where he is trying to get the Yemeni together, and trying to use the international community, trying to use the regional dynamics. The regional dynamics are important. The regional dynamics for Yemen is not only KSA and UAE. It's also, you have Qatar, you have Oman, you have Egypt, you have the Arab
as well.
League.
Iran
You have
now playing a role.
Anyway, he visited Iran already. I mean, Martin took him, I don't know how many years to go and visit Iran. He visited Iran in the very beginning of his time. I mean, I think he is trying. However, I would like to say it for history. I mean, he will not work if the international community continue play the role that they were playing during Jamal bin Omar and during Wuld Sheikh and during Martin Griffiths. If the international community, especially I'm talking about very big part of the international community, is neutralized, which is Europe. Basically, I mean, many of the envoys and many of the people think the international community are the P3. Basically, the P3 could not do anything unless Europe and other international community players interfere on that and help the special envoy to tackle. Because, I mean, every party in Yemen, you can influence by international and by regional. Then use that. I mean, you go ahead, you facilitate a dialogue, facilitate a negotiation, and then go one by one. I am sure at the end of the day, if Ansarullah will find their space in Yemen, they will have to come to solution. If SCC and other players from the south will have their place, they will come, and other political parties also. I mean, at the end of the day, Islah and the rest of the day, they cannot come against the whole international and the regional community willing. I think everybody got tired from Yemen. Everybody, even the political parties, but the only remaining part of Yemen are the Yemeni, the public. The public is not mobilized yet. I think, I mean, any special envoy need to engage the public in advocacy. The public, Yemeni public, international community in general. I'm not talking about Security Council. The advocacy could play a very big role in forcing the Yemeni to come together in a way where they can save Yemen. I'm sorry if I extended my time.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ustad. No, and I really wanted to pick up where you are, to transition to Dr. Najeeb, because you've mentioned one of the main factors during this conflict in the political environment from 2011 to 2013 to 2015 to present, where in 2011 it was just two parties, correct? I mean, it was just the GPC and the JMP, Al-Mushtarak. Al-Mushtarak had a leadership, and Mushtarak had consultations. But what we saw in 2011 was not only the UN envoy, bin Omar, shuttling through meetings between the parties, but it was also the G10, the group of 10 embassies that were talking to every political party to bring them to the table, to have them agree to the text, to have them agree to the path forward. And we've seen since the end of the national dialogue that has disintegrated. That environment no longer exists for an UN envoy to operate in, whether it was Martin Griffiths or now Hans Grunberg, where before you had all the parties in Sana'a, you had the leadership stationed in Sana'a, you could visit them, everything. And now today you have this shuttle diplomacy, but throughout, not merely throughout the region, but taking it to Western Europe and the US. And that's where I want Dr. Najeeb to pick up and tell us of his experience and his views on the environment today, with the relationship that his political party and other parties have had with the office of the UN envoy since Ben Omar. Dr. Najeeb, do you think that the UN envoy today can play a role in unifying the legitimate government, the international recognized government, as a unified front to sit across the table from the Houthis to negotiate the way forward?
Okay, thank you very much, Fernando, and also for Mr. Marwan. Really, I've just heard the very interesting, things. But to be honest, just really accept, my views, and maybe something you may hear, and maybe you will not be happy with it. So just in advance, I would like to say sorry about what I'm going to say. First of all, I think if I can send a congratulation message to Houthis that they have, succeeded to mislead the international community, and they just gave the impression that they are good people, and now they are working very hard to legitimize their coup against the legitimized power in Yemen. But let me just go back, as you said, from your question, that 2011, when just we finished with this, GCC initiatives. But I would like just to correct something, because I can speak frankly. I've heard now some ideas which are to be honest, this is quietly misleading, groundless, and quite untrue. First of all, Houthis have signed the GCC initiative, the draft, by Dr. Ahmed Sharafuddin, the head of the Houthi delegation for this national dialogue. But because they are under the table, they were planning to go against the majority of Yemenis, against the national willing for just to come up with a new era of transitional period. So there was an early planning for just working against this national willing to go and for working for stabilizing Yemen. So they have killed Ahmed Sharafuddin, and you know that in Sana'a, when he prepared, at that time he was the head of delegation, and he was planning to go to sign the final, but the draft has been signed by Houthis. Same applied to the southern activists. Most of them were there and just signed. The national dialogue, composed of all demands put on the table for all partners, all political partners, the GBC, the joint meeting parties, Ittihad al-Ahzab al-Mushtarak, and also for the southern activists, not only those who are later on belong to the, what do you call it, Southern Transition Council. At that time, there was no Southern Transition Council, but there was Southern activists, and they have also agreed about it. Then I can prove that within 2012 and 2014, there were a draft of the constitutional, the constitution for the federal state, and had been finished in Abu Dhabi. Representatives of all parties were there in that team, and this have succeeded really to come up with this final draft of the constitutional document. when you say that, somebody said that the Houthis are well organized, we know Houthis well, we are Yemenis. What is ruling now, the Sana'a and also all these areas under the Houthi controls, they are Iranian people, and Lebanese experts belong to Hezbollah. Houthis have got limited, resources or to counter or to control all these critical and complex issues like economy, security, communication, all these things. So they have huge expert there in Sana'a. On the top of that is Hassan Erlo. It is very working on the table in front of the people, in front of all these, observers. So, Houthis, they are working an agent for the hands of Iran to have control on the southern peninsula and also come up with the other areas, reaching, the Saudi area and other areas in the Arab Peninsula. So, to be honest, really, also, I'm not happy about this performance of UN envoys, starting from Ben Omar, who have succeeded to bring Houthis to the capital of Sana'a, and go upward with the Ahmed Ould Sheikh and also Martin Griffiths, of all these meeting between Houthis and legitimized representatives at Geneva and also at Kuwait, and all are failed. And even Stockholm, although has been signed by Houthis and so by the Yemen government, again also Stockholm Agreement also was failed, and because they don't implemented by Houthis. And beside that, really Houthis also put their hands and continue putting their hands on the public money and all these tax resources from Hudaydah tax issues, put their hand on it, and they stop even giving salaries to the staff of the state. When they said about there is siege in Houthis in Hudaydah shipport and also Sana'a shipport, there is no siege really. The essential foods and essential commodities all are coming very freely to the ship airports. And to prove that, there is huge tax money. So when there is huge tax money from Hudaydah activities, this means that Hudaydah is open, and you can see the stores in Sana'a full of essential foods. The problem not with the coming of these essential items and commodities. The problem is people, they don't have money. But Houthis are very interested to open these shipboards, Sana'a airports, to be open widely. To they have their agendas to bring other people and fighters and experts come from Iran and from Lebanon and all these things. So if you just count how many air flights coming monthly to Sana'a airport, at least 200 flights per month. While in Aden, which is under the control between two brackets, under control of the legitimate power, but initially under the control of the Southern, Transitional Council, there's no more than 100, flights per month. So who is going to be? Who is the open airport and who's the closed airport? So and you can see Houthis are going freely from Sana'a under the flag of UN, flights. They are going freely from Sana'a to Muscat, and from Muscat to every areas, mainly Tehran and also Beirut as well. So they are not under the siege, but they would like to open it for weapons, for fighters, for experts.
The
problem is,
can you talk about this, Dr.
Najeeb? Just give me one idea, then I can stop. The problem is Houthis, they would like working very hard to legitimize their coup power and to be recognized as a legitimate body in Yemen. One of the big mistakes, I can say, for these UN envoys, they encourage Houthis to give them the impression they dealing with them as if they are legitimate power. When somebody said that UN envoys adhere to international, willingness and international community willingness, so why don't UN envoys respect UN Security Council 2216, who just put pressure on Houthis and also put it very clearly that they should hand it over the heavy weapons coming from states captured by the states. The UN envoys all have got these mistakes. They ignored the silent majority, which is the last point mentioned by Mr. Marwan, which I agreed about it, the last one, that UN envoys, they just bypassed and ignored these silent majority people with their representatives and just go, to select with some of these selective attitudes with Houthis and also with other partners. So I expect that Hans has got, he will come up with the same, situation faced by his colleagues before, unless he should think beyond the frame of the classical views and attitudes made by his previous views. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. But if you can please then help us with understanding this environment today. And again, to go back to my question earlier from Mr. Marwan's comments, there needs to be a front. There can't just be individual parties exerting pressure on the new envoy, on Hans Grunberg, but there needs to be a collective, a group that forms the legitimate government. Today, it's the SDC, Islah, part of the Multamar, the Socialist Party, etc., that form part of that cabinet today, form part of that legitimate government today. Do you seeing the history that you describe of the past 3 envoys, do you believe in what you've seen from the new envoy? Do you believe that he can gather these parties together to present one front to sit with the Houthis to negotiate? Because at the end of the day, we are talking about how do we get back into the peace process, right? How do Yemenis get back to the table and start de-escalating and start working toward a final peace agreement? Do you think that this new envoy could gain your party's confidence and be able to present the united front as it was back in 2011?
Do you think that this is the point?
Well, the UN envoy comes in and he has to go. I understand your point about the Houthi legitimization of Houthis and as it being an international problem. But at the end of the day, on the ground, it is what it is. And the Houthi, someone has to negotiate with the Houthis in order for them to withdraw from Ma'rib, in order to withdraw from Hodeidah, in order to de-escalate in Taiz and Al-Baida, etc. Someone needs to sit down with the Houthis because apparently the military situation is not going to hold the Houthis.
Sorry about that. This is the point. I don't think that this is the point. We don't have a problem with the legitimate body, whether it's political parties or the government, and also Hadi and Prime Minister and elsewhere. The problem is Houthis is a project of war and not a project of peace. It's a project of death and not a project of life. You have to understand that very clearly.
So how do you deal with that? How do you bring de-escalation?
Yes, I can give proofs. I can give numbers. When they just send us to death on their courts under their control in Sana'a, they send member of parliament to death and their opponents to death, and they killed so many people and their prisoners. They are innocent people. They are civilian people, and they captured many of their opponents. So do you think that this sort of people, they are planning for peace? When they
eventually there needs to be de-escalation, Ustad, at the battlefront, in Hodeidah.
Yeah, I agree. But really, envoys, UN envoys, this is the problem with UN envoys. They just behave with the Houthis as if they are a legitimate body with legitimized, rights. So they are equal to the other, opposite part, which is the recognized, government or recognized power in front of them. So they encourage those people. That they are as if they have the right to counter, to capture, to put their hands on public money, private money, killing people, so many people under their control. So you don't are working in this way. They are not planning for peace. And they don't have, really, to be honest, they don't have their own willingness. They are completely under the control of Iran.
So
So
then should the legitimate government of Yemen then begin talks with Iran in order to de-escalate, in order for Iran to pressure
no, I don't
the
think so.
Houthis
No,
to
no,
de-escalate?
no. This means that I get, as if we justify the interference of Iran to Yemen if we just start to speak
Right.
with Iran directly.
Right.
But
So
what
again,
I say,
who sits at the table today? If
I
Hans,
can
if
I
the
can
UN
yes, I
envoy-
can take. I feel something. Yes, I can take the last point, the last one. Although really, I'm not agree about some ideas and talks made by Mr. Marwan. But really, the last one was very interesting. What he said that the Yemenis at the end of the day they should sit together. What I suggest, if UN envoy start, as I said before, start to think beyond the frame of the classical thinking made by his previous colleagues. In this case, if UN envoy Hans can, for example, persuade the two sides, the Houthis and the legitimate power, to set up no-fly zone area in adjacent areas between the conflicting areas. So no-fly areas to be a safe place, controlled and protected by the blue cap, forces, by UN. So in this case, persuade the two parties to bring the MPs of 2003 election, which is the legitimate election, to come together. Those are, know themselves very well. They have good relations with them. So I think they can sit together and come up with compromised solutions. And those who are coming from Sana'a, they will be under the control and they will carry the agenda of Houthis. Those who are coming from elsewhere in Yemen, also outside Yemen, they will carry also the agendas of the legitimate power, but with some mediation by international. To be honest, so we can mimic the national dialogue meeting. So we can mimic this, but in this case, bringing MPs, legitimate MPs, not those who are coming after that by Houthis.
Right.
That's it.
Well, to make a point, Dr. Najeeb, I handed a proposal similar to this back in 2019 to a particular European state, to their diplomats, precisely on this, on how to initiate an intra-parliament dialogue to serve as confidence building to begin. So I still think it's a good idea. It's an interesting beginning for confidence building, as you say. But it's interesting how since 2019, the external actors are the ones that have ignored that idea, and therefore, not giving the power to the UN envoy to move forward with creative ideas. If I could, Doctor, we're going to run out of time for Q&A, and I do want to ask something to Mr. Marwan. Are you still with us, Mr. Marwan?
Yes, I am.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Ustad, I think a lot of the words that we've heard from Dr. Najeeb are we have to admit that they're echoed by a lot of Yemenis on the ground, not just politicians at the level of Dr. Najeeb. But this is one of the things that I want to ask you, because when I served in the UN panel, in my daily communication with Yemenis from various parties, and now I've been to New York, now I'm in DC at the moment, meeting with Yemenis of all across the political spectrum. Where we are today, where Yemen is today, we are at the point where when Mr. Martin Griffiths announced that he was stepping down from UN envoy, we were all talking, Yemenis and us foreign observers, we were all talking about how do we stop the Houthis from taking Marib. Now, I can tell you from my discussions over the last month, 4 weeks, with Yemenis and international and diplomats and analysts, now the conversation has switched to how do we deal with the Houthis after they've taken Marib. And the thing that I want to bring up is with regards to Martin Griffiths. I've been a critic of Martin Griffiths for a very long time. A lot of people know me personally, and they've heard my criticism. But we cannot help but understand, sympathize with Yemeni views. A lot of Yemenis, politicians and ordinary Yemenis on the ground that say, wait a minute, in June 2018, Martin Griffiths was very effective in halting the advance into Hodeidah by pro-government troops, and hence leading to the December, another halt to the military operations in Hodeidah in November, leading to the talks in December. And then we've seen the failure for 3 years of the handing over of Hodeidah. But now, the Houthis didn't start their offensive in Ma'arib in April 2021. They started their offensive in Ma'arib in January 2020. So how can you, if you're speaking to Yemenis directly, how do you see this from having come but having been in the UN Envoy's office, having seen this from inside? What were the obstacles that Martin Griffiths faced over the last 12 months of his tenure as UN Envoy with regards to Ma'arib? Why is it such a crisis today? And it's very different to the crisis in Hodeidah in 2018.
Thank you, Habibi. I mean, it's just like I'm not going to tell you what my views were about the whole issue, but I would like to say, even to Dr. Najeeb himself, I know that he might not like what I said, but I'm not saying that because of I love the Houthis or I love the internationally recognized government. I mean, the Prime Minister is my friend. I mean, the Foreign Minister is my friend. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking from somebody who lived his life in conflict and basically in the region, and we see how things goes. We see how the region is going. I mean, at the end of the day, we have an issue. We have a big issue going on in Yemen, and unless we talk to everybody, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. As you have, I mean, as you have rightly said, we have to talk to Ansarullah, we have to talk to Islah, we have to talk to SCC, we have to talk to whoever can be helpful in solving Yemen issue. I'm telling you, Hodeidah time is totally different time, and we need to understand Hodeidah. I mean, for the first time, I say it in a public forum, was not about Yemen. It has to do with the regional dynamics. It's not Martin Griffiths who created Hodeidah. It's the regional dynamic he created Hodeidah. And I will say it again, maybe I should not have said it because I was part of in Stockholm. I mean, basically, up till the SG had arrived to Stockholm, we did not have agreement. We did not have any agreement about Hodeidah. The SG arrived and make calls where I don't want to say where he make the calls, and we woke up with Hodeidah agreement. It's not like Martin Griffiths, the one who has done Hodeidah agreement is not Martin Griffiths who has stopped the internationally recognized government from taking over Hodeidah. No, it's not. It's the regional and the international dynamics. Yeah, I'm telling you, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, whether we like it or not, the Houthis are part of Yemen politics. I mean, since a long time. It's not today. Now they have succeeded. They are, I mean, still I say that they are organized. I mean, they get the support from outside like anybody else in Yemen, like anybody else in the region, not in Yemen. Everybody had their guarantor somewhere. Everyone in Yemen and in Palestine, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Libya, in Sudan, and everybody has extensions or has.
Have you seen ordinary Yemenis, and we often see this in social media, where the criticism of the UN and the international community is that they've given the Houthis the green light, quote unquote. And these are their words, not my words, but in social media, that they've given the green light to the Houthis to take Hodeidah, to keep Hodeidah. Now they're giving the green light to the Houthis to take Marib. But one of my issues that I wanted to bring up is to you, with two last issues to bring up to you, is transparency from the UN Envoy's office as perceived by the ordinary Yemenis, where Yemenis want more information. They see all of these posts and they see the UN Envoy's office holding all these workshops in Amman and Geneva, etc. But, you know, the transparency on the process, like what you have brought up right now regarding Hodeidah in 2018, the role of regional powers or international powers, you know, overstepping on the legitimate government, for example, right? Who was in June 2018 were winning on the ground toward at the airport toward Hodeidah, and the fear was, you know, there's going to be a disaster if Amalaka and the Republican Guard, guards of the Republic, take Hodeidah. There's going to be a disaster. It's a humanitarian disaster if the war lands on the streets. But now when we take it to Marib, you know, just look at the humanitarian disaster 16 kilometers from west of Marib city, and in Abdia and Al Joba now, which is exacerbating, not fixing, not decreasing the humanitarian needs, but deepening the humanitarian crisis, creating more IDPs. There were already 1 million IDPs. Now there's more IDPs from southern Marib. And the ordinary Yemeni is asking, you know, what can the UN envoy do, or why should Yemenis continue to welcome the UN envoy? We know why the parties welcome the UN envoy, it legitimizes them, but ordinary Yemenis, why should they welcome the UN envoy? And my second and last question is, you know, I dealt with this when I was in the UN panel regarding the mandate, that our mandate was not to address the legitimate government issues or the coalition, but how did the UN envoy deal with the accusations of corruption in the legitimate government, which, you know, the UN panel reported extensively in January 2021 in their report of January 2021, and the confusing messages from the coalition, which now, as you rightly mentioned, you know, we woke up to the news today that Saudi Arabia is pulling from Aden, as the UN envoy and the US envoy have left Aden just last night. How do you see those two questions? How do you see those two
Fernando, sorry to interrupt you. Will you be able just to give me also in equal time? So I can
yes. Right after Mr. Marwan, you can have some closing comments, Doctor.
Yes, I mean, I'm telling you, I mean, I think, I mean, in my personal view, I think the Yemeni should throw shoes on us, on the international community. I mean, this a blunt answer. I mean, you will not hear it.
Thank you.
I usually in my meetings with the civil society, with the youth group, with all this woman issue, which always become like a priority for the international community, I tell them, I was very honest with them. I was telling them, guys, I mean, don't expect us get solutions. I mean, you have to pressure your politicians. Therefore, I called, and I think Hans, or the new Special Envoy, is aware of that, and I mean, at least he promised that he's trying to create sort of public advocacy by the Yemenis on their parties and the UN and on the international community and on the regional players. That's where the solution will start. That's where the solution will start. I mean, regarding of the corruption in the international recognized government. I mean, the office of the Special Envoy is not a mission for Yemen. You know, you worked in the UN. We are. I mean, it is not a mission. It is a few staff member who are running certain mandate with the political mandate. Now, I think the new special envoy is trying to engage in economic while he's not in the mandate. I mean, again, and he does not have the capacity. He is trying to, he promised that he's trying to recruit his Europe and the EU to do that. But at the end of the day, also, the UN within the Security Council, within the international community, is not taking its right. I mean, till now, there is no UN assistant mission to Yemen. There is a special office. You know, Hudaydah budget when it was established, it was 10 times budget than the Office of Special Envoy, 10 times. Can you imagine that? Right. I mean, right. Hudaydah, part of Yemen, and the one who is handling the national Yemen it was almost 10th of the budget. I mean, there are issues. I mean, there are issues. The public might not know, even some of the international organizations do not know. But still, I believe the impartiality of the UN, if it was kept and expanding the real role of the UN, as our friend have presented in the very beginning, how the UN should mediate. If it is going to be implemented, I think I have the hope. I have to have hope. I cannot. I mean, at the end of the day, Yemen, for me, as a person, is part of my psychology. Yemen is, I believe, the Arab originally is Yemen. Yemen, historically speaking, has a civilization, and nobody wants to see Yemen this way. Therefore, you work with emotion sometimes with Yemen on the issue. I am not 100% impartial. I believe at the end of the day that the Yemeni has the right, and they are basically used at the end of the day, used by whoever. I think everybody knows. I mean, at the end of the day, that's why I was almost inciting Yemeni individuals to basically come up with something. I was telling the youth, you are basically the tool of the war, be the tool of the peace. Be the tool of the peace. At the end of the day, advocate for yourself, advocate for your country, advocate for. I was also dealing with the national staff. Speak up, say what you believe. I mean, this is where Yemen should go. I believe at the end of the day, if we put Yemen in either in this acts or in this acts, the Yemeni are losers. At the end of the day, because this acts is something for themselves, and this acts is something for themselves. I mean, at the end, not for Yemen, not for Palestine, not for Lebanon, not for Jordan, it's for themselves. I mean, and Yemen become a tool for regional players. And this is what I am asking for. I am asking for the Yemeni to be Yemenis themselves, patriotic, that their country's interest in the first place, and pressure the special envoy, pressure the international community, pressure their neighbors to come up with something. I mean, what in 2011, Yemen was a model of the Arab Spring on the way they were organized, the way they were doing things, and the way they were. Unfortunately, it ended up with the situation like now. I hope at the end of the day that I have hope. I know Hans very well. When he was an ambassador, we had a long-standing relationship, and he's young and he has an opportunity. He has a golden opportunity to be a star of the UN as well, because Yemen can be solved. It's not Palestine and Israel, or it's not the Israeli-Arab conflict. It's much easier. I hope that he will be able to do something, and he will go the right path on that. And I agree with Dr. Najeeb. At the end of the day, I hope he will not follow the previous one, and he will start differently on tackling Yemen. Thank you.
very much, Mr. Marwan. Dr. Najeeb, you had a comment? Doctor,
Yes,
can you
really,
hear me?
I agree. I agree. Just hang on. Really, yes, I agree what Mr. Marwan has said, that Yemeni should work truly as Yemenis. But just do Mr. Marwan thinks that Iran will allow Houthis to behave as true Yemenis? I don't think so. They are completely under the controlling of Iran. This is interest of Iran, this is the agenda of Iran, and they put just the file of the issue, the crisis of Yemen is part of their issues when they are dialogue with Europe and also with the Americans. I would like just to raise one queries. Where is these regional and international dynamics which can help to stop UN aircrafts and UN facilities to be part of the tools of Houthis in their war against Yemen and against legitimate power and also against Yemeni people? Where is this? I mean, when there is an interest for Houthis to be implemented, there is regional and international, tactics and dynamics. But when there is true benefits and true, initiatives for peace, there is no willingness for UN international community. Really, we are very, very, impressed about the role of UN agencies, facilities, aeroplanes, all these flights coming to Sana'a, and also all facilities coming in Hodeidah. I can prove that Hodeidah is not under the siege when Mr. Marwan said the budget is more than 10 times what is implemented for the other bodies. So these are open shipboard for Houthis, but Houthis working to work very freely for weapons to come very freely without any obstacles and protection. So, but now really you can see, I mean, they are smuggling weapons in the Red Sea and also in other areas, even from Mahra to Hodeidah and also to Salif shipboards. They put their hands on public budgets. They send huge, children and youth for this battle of war. But I can guarantee, I can assure that Houthis will not be able to come to, even if they are close to Ma'arib city, but they will not. And at the border, at the walls of Ma'arib city, the project of Houthi will be defeated, will be destroyed. I can assure that. Even if they conquer it today or tomorrow, people in Yemen will not accept the Iran project and Iran settlement in Yemen.
Dr. Najeeb, and the question always goes back, how do you stop it? The question always goes back to, okay, we know what the problem is, we know what the issues are, how do you deal with them? Is it perpetual war?
As I said before,
I agree.
Yes, as I said before, when there is true regional and international dynamics, so they can, for example, set up a no-fly zone, so bring MPs, representative of the majority of the people in Yemen, to sit together, and at the end of the day, they will come up with a true solution as a roadmap for sustainable peace in Yemen. I can assure that I remember the parliament. I know my friend, I know my colleagues in Sana'a who are now working under the control of Houthis, and also the other colleagues who are working outside. When we come together as colleagues, our brothers, as I said, Marwan, as true Yemenis, I'm sure no matter what is types of agendas on the table, but we will come for the computerized, for mutual agreements. For
do you have any
sorry,
faith?
Sorry again.
Do you have any faith in the Saudi-Iranian talks? Do you think that is a different, or do you think that that this new envoy needs to do what Martin Griffiths started in January? And do you think Hans needs to go back to Tehran and deal with Iran?
What I expect when there is Saudi-Iran dialogue, they are discussing their own interest and how they can secure and guarantee their own interest, which is related to the Yemen crisis. But the true interest of Yemeni peoples, it will be absent on the table of this dialogue. But really, I can assure that when Yemenis come together under this regional and international dialogue, they can, for example, give an agreement that this fighting will stop. There is dialogue will start with the majority of the people, and they will come at the end of the day for mutual and for sustainable solution and peace in Yemen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Najeeb. It's a pleasure to chat with you again. Even if it's through Zoom, one day we'll have coffee together in person. Mr. Marwan Ali, thank you so much for joining us, for your insight into the last 10 years that Yemen has experienced, and definitely as someone that has, thousands of friends, not just colleagues, but friends, whether it's in Sana'a, Taiz, Aden, Hadramaut, Hodeidah, and I miss them, and I hope soon I get to see them face to face. Definitely, I as well hope that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that this conflict begins to wind down for the sake of the ordinary Yemenis, the IDPs, the people that can't buy food in the markets, the unemployed, the widows, the orphans, that this conflict needs to end. People need to get back to ordinary life and enjoy life, not just work to survive for anything. I definitely believe, just like Omar and Hussam and others at the Washington Center, that this conversation needs to continue. I definitely agree with Dr. Najeeb that something as simple as an intra-parliamentarian dialogue is needed as confidence building. I agree with Mr. Marwan that ordinary people definitely need to look for a brighter option and push their own political parties, Yemeni political parties, to be creative, to make concessions, compromises for the benefit of the people, not for the benefit of individual political parties, not for the benefit of anyone struggling for power in Yemen, but for the benefit of over 28 million Yemenis suffering for more than 7 years. That they find a way to make compromises and make peace, and definitely for Houthis in Sana'a to realize that ruling by the stick creates more chaos, more suffering, and it's time to sit down and govern. Provide electricity, provide food, provide jobs all around. Omar, thank you very much for having me here, and hopefully the conversation continues at the summit. Thank you for inviting me, for having me here. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys, and hopefully we can continue this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ustad.
Yeah,
you can give the closing comments, Omar.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would appreciate, I know we're over the time. Our plan was like for 1 hour and 15 minutes, but actually we passed the time. It was actually a thoughtful discussion, and I know we have some questions, but we would follow up with the next events and webinars. For the audience, we have sent the link to our website, to the whole study. We'd appreciate you guys if you can dig into this study and read more about the whole, resolutions. And we hope, I know by the end of this discussion, me and the other audience, we had some hope at the beginning of the discussion, and now felt like some disappointment, but we will not, give up. We will have some hope, and we will be optimistic. And I would appreciate you guys sending your email and keep, tone in our website for the upcoming events. And thank you so much for attending this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.